And NPR has abandoned Twitter because they find that their feelings were hurt over being branded as state-affiliated media. But, Buck, you and I spend a lot of time talking about how fundamentally dishonest much of the media is in their coverage. And I'm not talking primarily, when I say that, about people who share their opinions, right? I'm talking about how the narrative gets set, how it all gets baked, how many people out there come to believe what they believe, even when there is not a substantial basis of support for it. And I woke up this morning and I saw you looking at it, watching it, and it certainly has gone viral in general. Elon Musk sat down for an interview with the BBC. And there are a bunch of different angles on this story, but I wanted to hit this one in particular. The BBC reporter said that Twitter was, quote, full of hateful content. We're going to play this audio for you in a moment. But maybe more significant, Buck, is that Elon Musk has now cut the Twitter employees from 8,000 Twitter employees, which is how many there were when he purchased the company, to 1,500. He has cut roughly 80% of all of Twitter employees. And what's fascinating is he says that on a cash flow basis, Twitter was on the way to losing $3 billion. That is being wildly unprofitable. And based on firing 80% roughly of all the Twitter staff, he now is set to have Twitter as a break-even company. And importantly, company seems to be working basically the same that it was before, which suggests there's an awful lot of fat. And Buck, when I see something like that, I wonder, what percentage of our government employees, since tax day is coming up very close, what percentage of government employees do you think could be fired and no change whatsoever occur in the overall functioning of the United States government?
In a lot of federal agencies, I think you could, in one fell swoop, get rid of 50% of the employees in one day without even really thinking about restructuring in any specific way. Just say, okay, these departments are at X, we're going to cut them down to Y, and I don't think you would notice a difference in a lot of them. And
I think 50% is very fair.
Agencies I think you could get rid of where, yeah, I mean, of course, there's going to be a little bit of a disruption in the system, but I think it would be fine. So
when I saw that 80% in a for-profit corporation, Buck, when I started as a young lawyer, I was kind of blown away by how inefficient big corporate entities could be, because technically they're trying to be for-profit, and they were inefficient, and it was eye-opening for me because I thought to myself, my goodness, if they're inefficient and they're for-profit, the government has to be orders of magnitude worse.
I also think, not to get too deep into the financial prospects of Twitter pre-Elon, but think about this. I mean, the guy understands a balance sheet and how to grow a company. If he had to do this just to avoid putting it on a path to bankruptcy, the previous management that was doing all of the coordination with the FBI, suppressing stuff that was damaging to Biden, the Hunter Biden laptop, all the things that we saw, the previous Twitter ownership must have just been on a descent, course into the side of the mountain. And you say to yourself, well, what was the plan there? It must have been that some left-wing billionaire was going to come along and either infuse them with cash, they were going to come along with maybe some private equity money or something and just keep propping this up. But they weren't propping it up because it's a great business. Those individuals would have been propping it up because it serves the political and cultural interests of left-wing narrative control. That has to be what was going on, or it was just going to go bankrupt.
$54.20 was the purchase price that Elon Musk bought it for. And I was a Twitter shareholder. I had been for a long time. I think Twitter stock would be $17 or $18 a share in this current economic environment if Elon Musk hadn't bought it for $54.20. But Elon Musk sat down for an interview with the BBC, and I just want you to listen to this entire exchange. And I think this is important, Buck, because Trump taught many Republicans how to fight. And I still think there are far too few Republicans who are willing to fight as it pertains to the dishonesty of the media. But I just want you to listen to this exchange and think to yourself, why can't more people do this. Listen.
Hang on a second. You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And
Then how did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying...
I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet. And yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well...
That's false.
No, what I claimed...
You just lied.
What I claimed was... there are many organizations that say that that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed or not, I mean, right, and
literally
if you look at something
one.
like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK, they will say that. So
look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
So what Elon has done here, and by the way, this is really
Textbook.
a course in how journalism is supposed to go. You can't just allow someone to evade. If they make a statement, you have to have them either back it up, or they can admit that they said something in error, or they misspoke, or they're using talking points and they shouldn't do that, which is what happened here. But I think this is not only a window into how journalists in general, and I hate all these people who are always saying, "Oh, but what about Fox News and what about talk radio?" And it's like, what, 5% of the global journalism landscape? Maybe. I mean, that's putting it generously, I think. And if the journo establishment had their way, they would shut all that down too. We'd go back to the fairness doctrine, and Fox News wouldn't be allowed to exist, and all the rest of it, right? But Clay, beyond that, what you see with the hateful speeches on the rise on the platform is reminiscent of the lie that they were caught in when they shut down Parler, but not Facebook, when there was far more before the election, and there was far more egregious stuff being posted on Facebook than was being posted on Parler. And they said, well, it's because Parler wasn't doing enough moderation. That was why Amazon Web Services kicked it off. To the left, yes, he's just using the talking points, and this guy obviously is a sheep and doesn't know anything, and Elon fleeced the sheep, if you will, in front of all of us. But hateful to the left just means stuff I don't like.
Yes.
That's what it actually means. They use that term because it weaponizes their like and dislike of something, but they don't actually mean hateful in the sense that anybody else would understand it.
I also think this is a masterclass on how to handle a journalist. And let me just be clear. Most journalists are not particularly smart, and they don't work that hard. They are cogs in the machine. They are willing to accept whatever the narrative is. And I want to give you an indication, and I'm not saying we're going to be perfect and always avoiding constructs like this, but whenever you hear a journalist preface a question by saying something like, people say, or some people say, and once you start to pay attention to it, you will notice it all the time. People say, some people say. Well, people say everything. I could say to anyone, people say that the moon landing was faked. Yes, some people do say that. People say that we are living in a simulation and none of this is real. Yes, people do say that. But when you allow people say, or some people say, to preface a question that allows you to further your narrative, right? That is dishonest journalism. Now, this guy got called out on it, and what you'll see is very often these kind of questions, people say, some people say, there is no underlying foundational basis because the journalist is lazy, often not very smart, and not particularly talented. What Elon Musk did there is demonstrate the narrative is, oh, there's tons of hateful content. And in fact, before that part was cut off, he said, well, there's there's slightly sexist commentary. And I believe I'm paraphrasing there. I think it was slightly sexist was the phrase. And Elon Musk said, wait a minute, what do you mean by slightly sexist? And why should it be banned? And who is the determination of what is sexist or what is racist? This is perfect. Everybody needs to do this. And the other thing I would tell everybody out there in politics and in media, make sure that you do either live interviews or you record the entire thing. Do not allow the journalist to talk to you for an hour and take 2 minutes of what you said and put it in the context and narrative he or she prefers.
You know, you'll often hear about lies of exaggeration, right? A lie of exaggeration. Like if you, and this will come up in the workplace. If you say, you know, well, I'm a Mandarin Chinese speaker, and that actually means that you can say 5 words. I mean, technically you could try to claim, but really that's a lie of exaggeration, right? There's also a lie of scale. And the lie of scale is when, let's say, a person who is affiliated with the left does something awful, and then CNN goes on air, pulls, they've done this to me, by the way, where they'll just pull a random tweet from a random person. This is back in the pre-Trump era. And they'll say, did you see this horrible thing this person wrote on the internet? And I look at them and I wanted to say, what does that have to do with anything? Like,
right.
Like, why? But they're trying to present what is finite, random, and unimportant and rare as massively common, important, and powerful to make a point about narrative. They do this with hate speech all the time. They do this with what they call racism, what they claim to be racism or racist all the time. And think about the effect of this. Like after, look, even after the Nashville shooting by the trans terrorists, still no manifesto, by the way. I'm not letting this go. Still no manifesto. How many weeks are going to pass?
16 days.
And after that, what does the left immediately fall on? Oh, there's such a rise in hate speech against the trans community online. And we're all supposed to say, oh, well, hold on. I guess we can't speak the truth about what happened here. Is there a rise in hate speech? Who's doing the hate speech? What are you basing this against? Clay, they used to do this the same thing when there were jihadist ISIS terror attacks. The response you would get from libs, always after some guy was like, I'm doing this for ISIS and Allah and Allahu Akbar, and try to run people over in a car, blow them up, was, oh, there's a rise in anti-Islamic hate speech online. Why? Because 2 or 3 morons don't know the difference between what one person does versus what, everybody is doing. They do this all the time, though. This is how the media You've got
Oh, yeah, Media Matters, which is probably the dumbest organization on the planet. But you're mentioning this, and it reminds me on Friday, the headline, Fox Corp's Clay Travis amplified his anti-trans rhetoric after the Covenant shooting. I'm reading their headline. Subheadline, Clay Travis focused discussion on the shooter's gender to stoke a caustic culture war. And then here's the opening paragraph, Buck. Founder of Fox Corp's Outkick Media, Clay Travis is a right-wing conspiracy theorist and Fox News contributor known for using outrage over his stunts and conspiracy theories. They got conspiracy theories twice in the same opening sentence to generate an audience for his platform. Travis has a history of making sexist and now anti-trans comments. This is the kind of world that we live in. It's a fundamentally dishonest media, and I love when I see smart people like Elon Musk calling it out.